Guys, hope everyone's going well today for our monthly workshop today. Thanks for jumping on. I'm just waiting for a couple more people to log in. Sorry, everybody. Just got a few people still struggling through, and then we'll get cracking along. But really appreciate you jumping on this afternoon. And for those of you watching it live, there'll be plenty of time for questions. And for those of you who are watching it on a recording potentially, because some people couldn't make it, of course, you can always shoot us messages for questions as well. So, alrighty, so we're just about ready to go, guys. So what I'm going to do is, like I like to start a little bit because there's a few people here that have not been on before and may not know what we do or who we are. So I'll just do a quick 5-minute, 2-minute presentation of who we are, etc., and how to work the Zoom platform. And then we'll get straight into everything else. Yeah, too easy, guys. Bear with me 2 seconds. I'm just going to share my PowerPoint screen. Now, if any of you have any issues viewing it, etc., please let us know. And we can help you out. All right. So today we're talking about using multi-tenanted properties and how they can produce high cash flow for your portfolio. And of course, we have our member portfolio breakdown, which is something I like to share what we do for our members and what we've been able to achieve for some of our members as well. So before we get started, I like to let everyone know when next month's workshop is. At this stage, it's on Saturday, the 18th of May. That'll be next month workshop. We'll be discussing probably, I'm guessing it's going to be more around self-managed super funds. That's the plan at this stage. If that doesn't come together, we'll discuss something else. But at this stage, we're talking about self-managed super funds, how it works. A lot of people have been asking me about that lately as well. Okay, so if you're on a computer, if you're on a phone, it could be slightly different. But if you're on a computer, this is here. This is basically down the bottom, the control. So if you have questions, you can put it in the question and the Q&A box, or you can actually just put it in the chat box. It doesn't bother me either way. We can view both of those. But it's good for you to ask questions throughout. I might not be able to answer it at that exact time, but I'll come back to it if we can't. And the chat box as well. So to get started, I suppose in the chat box, guys, if you can just write in where you're from, whether it's New South Wales, Queensland, wherever you're from watching this today, that would be awesome. Just so I know you can use the chat box. And if you're not sure on the chat, of course, don't stress if you don't want to chat. All right. So I guess as a scenario is, why are you watching today? So with certain clients or certain people who might be new to this platform with us, you might be just interested in getting into real estate. You might want to try and be quite aggressive and get more of a passive income into your portfolio as well. But more than likely not, you were referred to us from someone too. So we work purely off referrals. We don't really advertise at all. So it's a high chance if you're here today for the first time, your accountant, mortgage broker, financial planner, friend or family member might have suggested to jump on and watch what we do. All right. So in today's workshop, I'm going to, of course, like I mentioned before, introduce a little bit about myself again. We're going to show you how using multi-tenanted properties can produce some high cash flow. I'm going to break down realistically, just analyze for you a HMO and how it all comes together. Like, it's quite detailed, so I like to make sure that you have a full understanding, if you were to look at one of these properties, what you're up for. And then, of course, breaking down one of our clients' case studies that we've had for about 13 years. And, you know, they're not a huge portfolio. They only had 3 properties, but they're currently starting to replace their income as well. So it's the reason why I do that is I want to show people you don't have to have 100 properties to do well with property either. So it's important that just every average Joe Blow can put it together for yourself. All right. Now, of course, we've got the disclaimer. So, you know, before you do anything, always get independent advice. The reason why I do these workshops is purely just to share ideas and strategies that anyone can do. And to probably most importantly for me is expand your knowledge base. Now, what that does, it gives you confidence to go and do something. A lot of people will want to do property or shares or Bitcoin, whatever your thing is. They'll dream about it for doing for 20 years. And when they decide to make the jump, I wouldn't say it's too late, but they could have done a lot better over that time. Easy as. So yeah, disclaimer. If you're going to do something, have a think about it first. Don't be a dick, basically. All right, let's get to the next part here. All right, let's get going. Okay, so for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Wayne Jessup. I'm an investor myself, buyer's agent, and I'm the founder of The Property Bloke. Even though most of us are women, we still call it The Property Bloke until they take over. I've bought and sold over 50 odd properties myself, thousands of properties for clients, and of course been involved with over $300 million of property transactions. So my accreditation, who are you dealing with? I'm a qualified property investment advisor, a diploma in financial planning, diploma in real estate, diploma in mortgage planning. Obviously, I'm accredited in I'm licensed in every state. The only one missing off that I'm actually licensed in Western Australia as well, and South Australia. I forgot to put them on there. And I'm a JP too. So the main thing is, I think when dealing with certain people is just making sure they are qualified to talk to and to deal with. And also what I do always suggest is if someone's telling you to buy shares, ask them what their portfolio is about too, because you want to make sure that someone suggesting you do a certain style of product is actually doing the same product, which I do. I do mention data partners throughout this workshop a fair bit. Now, data partners are people we use to analyze areas, analyze properties, and they give us information. So it could be as simple as realestate.com.au, but then we can go into more detail, for example, with the land and property information. Hotspotting is a big one we use, which helps us find hotspots per state every quarter. And then we go and do our own research, etc. as well. But we use a lot of data information and we compile that to help us work out what areas are good for our clients to buy in for all different reasons. All right, so let's get started, guys. This is what you're all here to learn about. Now, I do talk fast, and apologies for that in advance, but I can't stop that, unfortunately. So I'm going to break this down bit by bit for you guys. Now, and I just want to make sure you understand. Now, if you're not sure, if you missed something or you're not sure, obviously we can always catch up on a call at a later date, or we can go through any questions today, whatever you prefer. Now, oops, today's too far. So a HMO is a house of multiple occupants. That's what it's classed as. Now, that is what we call also a multi-tenanted property. The first thing I'm going to go through here, I've flicked a few slides ahead, but the first thing I'm going to go through here, guys, is some floor plans of what they actually look like. Because people will say, what do they look like? I don't know what they imagine would probably be the biggest thing is they think it's like an apartment building or something along those lines, where it's not. It's actually just purpose-built house of multiple occupant property, or an older property that you've converted into a house of multiple occupant property. So if you can see here, guys, this is a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom. It's actually 4.5 bath. Oh, no, 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom, this one. So every room has their own bathroom. Now, what we do is, as a house of multiple occupants, instead of renting the whole house as one lease, what we do is we actually lease out, or the best way of saying it, have room agreements for each individual room. And you do furnish the property and you do set it up properly as well, which I will go through in a minute. But as you'll see here, this is a 4-bedroom, a 4-bathroom property with a lounge and dining area. So each one of these rooms can be rented out individually. And of course, that will give you a much higher rent yield. There are additional expenses, but it does give you a much higher rent yield as well. So this one here is a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom property. This is like a getting started property with a HMO. Then what you move into next is you've got a 6-bedroom, 6-bathroom. So this is actually 6-bedroom and 6.5 bathrooms. And you'll see here as well that what you've got is you've got, see here, you've got a big laundry, still got a double garage. From the front, these properties just look like a normal house as well. But you've got 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, shared laundry, and of course, shared, kitchen and lounge room. But you'll see here as well, guys, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pantries. So depending on your floor plan, it's normally best to have each tenant have their own pantry space, because they're able to keep their stuff separate to everybody else. And also, when that tenant moves out, you're able to clean out, or your property manager at the time can clean out just that pantry, knowing that that was owned by room 1 or room 6 or whatever it might be. That's very important too, so you don't get old food and everything left in the property. But it's very important that when you do build these properties, that you put it in the right inclusions to make sure they can rent effectively. And say, for example, this floor plan here, this is one I've just done, and we arranged to make sure there was an aircon in every bedroom, for example. There's a few additions you've got to make sure are in place to make sure they come together. Now, this is a bit different again. This is a 5-bedroom, 5-bath. Now, you'll see here, each one of these bedrooms has a living room as well. And this is because each council or each state, just as well, I guess we could say, each state or council, they'll have certain conditions for you to have a HMO property in their council. So this one here is a Queensland-based 5-bed, 5-bath plus a living room. You have to have the living room as well as the bedroom. So I will show you photos in a sec, but it's basically exactly the same as a studio apartment, except for it's within a home, and it has the shared area is obviously a lot smaller because everyone has their own kitchenette. Where if I go back, I'll see if I can go back. Sorry, guys. Yeah, so see this 6-bedroom, 6-bathroom floor plan, they don't have kitchenettes in the bedrooms. They've only got bedroom, walk-in robe, bedroom, robe, and ensuite. That's all they've got. But when you head into this 5-bath, 5-bed property, you've got realistically 5 individual houses inside this one house. All right. And then, of course, you can go bigger again. This is more, how would you say, a 9-bed, 9-bathroom property is probably more focused towards the Victorian market. They're a lot easier to build down here and down there than, say, New South Wales. New South Wales, unfortunately, for everyone watching here from New South Wales is the hardest place to get these approved in all of Australia, believe it or not. But that's the government for you. So, but this one here, as you can see, this has a small kitchenette, has a shared laundry and a shared lounge room as well. Oh, hang on. Yeah, a tiny living area, which probably isn't used, and it has the kitchen as well. But they all have kitchenettes, but it's all just one big space rather than having a living room and bedroom separate. And you see out the front there, like this is the 9-bedroom, and you can see out the front here with the parking, you'll see there's 3 car spaces. So depending on your council will depend on how many car spaces you need. So you'll see this one here's a 9-bedroom, but this front property here is what we call an adaptable room. So adaptable means disabled. So obviously you've got someone who's in a wheelchair or classed as disabled, if that's the right or wrong way to say it, they can easily rent this front room because everything's going to be bigger. The bathroom's bigger, the hallway's bigger, etc., etc. And then, of course, there's other ones are just the normal size rooms. So depending on your council, sometimes you have to have one adaptable room because they want to make sure you can take on the entire marketplace. And then, of course, you've got this one here. This is obviously built on a smaller block of land. This is another 9-bedroom, 9-bath with a kitchenette, but this is over 2 stories, not just one single level property. This is 2. So you've got 5 bedrooms downstairs with bathrooms and kitchenettes, and then you've got 4 bedrooms upstairs. And these actually have a small balcony as well, which is awesome if you can do that without it costing too much money and without the neighbours knocking you on the head for it. So, but once again, 9 bedrooms, 3 car spaces. So how they do that is it's got to be built, obviously, this is more of a metro style building. That's why the car spaces don't have to be as high. But I know in New South Wales, you've got to have 1 car space for every room. Sorry, start again. 1 car space for every 2 rooms. So, and you can get bigger than 9-bed, 9-bath, but I'm one to say that would be the biggest I would ever go. Personally, I have heard of, I've seen 48 rooms, I've seen 12 rooms, but as they get bigger, they get more restrictions. And sometimes you have to have an on-site property manager as well, which is not really ideal because you're paying a salary, I guess, in a way to make that happen. And I'm not a huge fan of on-site property managers. I'm more about sticking to the average style property to give you the returns you need, and you're not locked into one huge property with huge debt. So yeah, that's my sort of suggestion there, but everyone to their own. So furnishings and setup. So a HMO property, house of multiple occupants, a lot of people would suggest maybe not furnishing it, but you have to furnish these properties. So you'll see here, this is a bedroom, of course. It's got queen bed, bedside table. Oh, hang on a sec, got a question. all good, guys. Sorry about that. So you'll see here, you've got the furnishings. You've got lounge, bedroom, fans, aircon, kitchenette. So for someone, realistically, anyone can live in this property, all right? But it comes fully furnished. So what happens is the tenant can come purely with just a bag at the end of the day. They might need a doona or blanket of some type. We always supply sheets and pillows, but they may need a blanket. TV's there. As you can see, everything's there. And you make it feel and look a bit homey too. It's not like a cold and isolated property. It's actually a real homey style property. We always supply towels as well. We supply towels in a bit of a pack, like soap and shampoo, etc. When they first move in. Some people don't have that straight off the bat. And then, of course, there's another bathroom. And this one here is the kitchen for the main area. So as you can see, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It just has to be usable to make sure it works. It doesn't have to be fancy at all. All right, so I've got a question here from James. Hey, mate, with your question, so Scott, can you please advise suitable land sizes for the HMO styles presented? Mate, it does vary per state. So I will come back to land size though, because what you want is with land size, you don't want too much land. You don't want to have a big backyard or anything like that. You really want to, how would you say, have very little garden maintenance. So, and each council is different as well, of course. But say, for example, I might just go back to that. Sorry, the 6-bedroom layout, I know, for example, we built that on a block of 375 square meters. So those listening, 375 square meters is not a big block of land. It's only a small block of land. But we don't want to have a backyard. That was with the 6-bedroom one. And of course, with the bigger ones, it does depend on what council you're in. Definitely does depend on what council you're in. Of course, you've got here a shared laundry as well. So you see here, that's 2 washing machines. Now, depending on the size of your property, anything over 4 bedrooms, we always recommend 2 separate washing machines because everyone tends to do their washing on the weekend at the same time. All right. So that's basically what they look like, how you furnish the property. It's very important as well. So these are the questions I regularly get when people ask me about HMOs. Now, the reason why I'm showing everyone these HMO properties is because it's a big thing I have in my own personal portfolio, and they're really high cash flow. So we're quite experienced with them personally on how we put them together and how we look after the property. So when we're dealing with new clients who want to put it all together, we've got that experience to say, okay, you have to do this each step of the way. We can guide you through the process. So, but a big question I have regularly is who will want to rent just the room? And it's quite funny. This normally comes from people who have never seen or heard of these before, which is a lot of people. But I've basically here broken down what tenants we personally have. So we have immigrants on student visas. They obviously it's about affordability and convenience. A lot of them don't have a lot of money or you could say belongings, but they're happy just to rent a room with a bathroom and live a comfortable life in that house. Young adults leaving home, sometimes you'll get that, like a 20-year-old that wants to move to a different location for work and has to leave home to do so. They obviously probably can't get a rental because they don't have anything at all as far as reference, etc. go. And honestly, the way the rental market is, they can't afford a house. But what we do is we're providing a home with all the furniture needed. So they just got to bring their bag and they're happy for that as well. Divorcees, we see that a fair bit where potentially the husband found a girlfriend and got kicked out or the other way around, whatever. Divorcees is a good one because when you first obviously separate, you don't want to have the cost of renting a whole house by yourself. So they're happy just to live in a room in the short period while they try and sort out their life. Out of area workers. So that's not just what we call fly in, fly out workers. That's someone who, say, for example, we're based in the Newcastle area. Sometimes we'll get tenants who are doing work in the Newcastle area, but live in Sydney. And with those guys and girls, the best benefit with that is they don't actually live in the house full time. They're only using it to sleep 3 or 4 nights a week and they go home the other nights as well. So that's also good. And then, of course, we've got the pensioners. Now, believe it or not, there's a lot of pensioners out there that cannot afford their own home. It's more single pensioners. We've got a couple of couples, but single pensioners, realistically, they just can't afford it. And a lot of them like the companionship as well, and having the security of having other people in the house, we're finding too. So now the pensioners, we've got 3 people within our own portfolio that are quite of the older age. And like I've said to them, as long as they don't die in the house, we're fine with it. So pensioners are also fine. And then, of course, just normal people living on a budget. And that's all about affordability. All you hear on the news is rental crisis, rental crisis, rental crisis. And what these properties do is they provide accommodation for people who either A, can't afford to live in their own home, or B, don't want to pay for it. So, and I understand both scenarios there. All right. So you got, say, for example, a 6-bedroom house. You've got 6 different people, 6 different personalities in the house. So you need to have certain, what we call house rules. House rules for us are enforced. It's not something we play around with. We're very strict with house rules. And these house rules, I'm just going to go through a few of them so that you guys can see what they are. And they're quite basic, but you'll be surprised that everyone is very considerate to these house rules, and you don't normally have many issues. So simple things. Keeping the noise to a minimum between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. Obviously, that's most people's sleep times. Always refrain from using bad or disrespectful language. That's a big one in relation to, in some houses, you might have 3 or 4 different nationalities as well. So everyone has to respect their own space, respect their way of life as well. Obviously, smoking is not permitted inside the house. That never is. Drug use and aggressive behavior will not be tolerated. So that's a big one. And if anything, you could say, when you look at aggressive behavior, if someone in one of our houses does become a little bit, I wouldn't say the word aggressive, but a tiny bit more assertive, we get rid of them straight away. It's very rare to happen, very, very rare, but we don't put up with that. And main thing is, we have a line you can't cross. As soon as you cross that line, you're gone. No excuses. We don't give anyone second chances or anything like that, because I do believe you're responsible for looking after everybody in the house. Please ensure the house is always kept tidy, clean up after yourself. That's a common one. We always say your bedroom must always be kept clean and tidy, but we understand some people aren't as clean and tidy as others, but just not disgusting is what we're after. Don't leave your personal belongings in the communal areas, because you're only paying for the room and area in your own room. And of course, any damage, they are charged for that as well. But we've never had damage really at all. I think the biggest issue we had is, as far as damage goes, it was accidental damage. Is where someone put a double-sided tape to hold up a curtain, and it came off and ripped off part of the gyprock with it. But that's not really damage. That's just an accidental damage, which is fine. They paid for it to be fixed anyway. You'll be very surprised. These people are very appreciative of the rooms. Obviously, let us know if you've got a water leak or any repairs and maintenance to the property. Always keep the doors locked. Now, we use keyed locks. I'm sorry, not keyed locks. Button locks. Most of them lock themselves when you close the house, but it's very important to make sure everything is locked. This is a big one. We always make sure guests and visitors are not permitted to stay overnight. So say, for example, you got Bob. Bob decides to go on Tinder. Bob's got to realise his Tinder date, him or her, has to leave by 9 o'clock. He's not paying for a couple. So if you've got a single person in a room and they want to have someone join them as a couple and you allow it, that is normally an additional cost for that next person. So if Bob has someone over continuously staying the night, I'm sure Jan down in room number 3 is going to tell us about Bob, and then we're going to give Bob a warning about the person staying overnight too much, because there's many different reasons. And the main one is, if you're a couple, you're paying more than someone that's a single person. So you've got to respect the house rules in that scenario. Parking, this is actually very important. So parking, you want to make sure where you build your property or where you buy your property, there's common sense in relation to parking. If you buy a property where there's no street parking, it's not going to work as a HMO. You're going to have complaints with neighbours, etc. But we always try and prefer to have the property in a scenario where there's additional parking space out on the road, and plenty of it as well. So no parking on the grass area. Please be considerate, one allocated space per room. No parties at all. But for example, we did have one guy asked to do a birthday party of an afternoon barbecue with some of his friends. We allowed that, of course. He got permission for it. He's been a tenant of ours for a long time. He's actually been with us twice. He was a tenant, moved away, came back. But we're okay with it as long as we're in control of what's happening. And in that scenario, we did ask all the other flatmates first if it was okay, and everyone was fine, and that all went well. No one under the age of 18 is a definite, so we don't allow children, and we definitely don't allow pets. Pets are a big one. There's no point in having pets. We get abused regularly. I wouldn't say abused, that's my way of saying it. We get people unhappy on the basis if they have a cat, they can't come, or if they have a child. And I'm like, oh, there's no way I'm letting a child in one of these, because you really don't know who the other tenants are. All right, so house rules for me are a big part of it. And you really got to monitor the house. So if you're looking after one yourself, obviously you've got to go there and make sure the house rules are looked after. But I do recommend having a property manager do that for you. And of course, a property manager will be doing that on your behalf. Oh, there we go. Property management. That's the next thing I was going to talk about anyway. So with property management of a HMO, you need to have a specialized HMO property manager. So what I mean by that is, say, for example, you've got Ray White down the road, or Stone Real Estate, or LJ Hooker, whatever it is. Most times they are not the right property manager to have to rent your property, your HMO property. Reason being, it's a different form of management. A specialized HMO property manager, they will charge a higher fee. They will definitely charge a higher fee. They do range from 10 to 15% of your gross rent as well. But what they do is they specialize in it, and they know they're going to have to be there more regular to make it all come together. And of course, I actually prefer if the property manager has one of these HMOs themselves. Most of them do, because most people who are specialized in the HMO property management area are someone who's already got 2 or 3 themselves, and then friends are asking them to look after their properties, and then they end up starting their own HMO property management company. That's normally the trend I see happen. So they're very passionate towards HMOs. They understand how they work, and they understand the benefits for the landlord. And this is a big one. Actually, on that second last one there, room agreements, not residential leases. So we don't do leases per room. The reason being, most councils won't allow you to have a lease on a room, but they'll let you to have a room agreement. Now, the room agreement, you could say, it doesn't really protect the tenant as much as what a lease does. So what I mean by that is, as a property manager, you don't have to give notice before you go to the property, because you're there on a regular basis all the time. And if the tenant does play up, like whether they stop paying their rent, whether they were to potentially cause discomfort for other guests, you don't have to give them lots of warnings and blah, blah, blah. You can just tell them you've got to get out. You've got a week to get out. You've got a day to get out, depending on the scenario. Occasionally, we've had to do that from people not paying rent. It's the odd occasion. It's very rare. And once, for example, we had someone who just got a bit cranky one night, and we said, you can't stay there anymore. So room agreements are probably very important to have in place and worded correctly, and not to have a lease in place, because you could get in trouble with your local council. And of course, you want your property manager to be relatively local to the property. So I've seen some online property managers, and I just think, if they don't have someone local who's monitoring the property on a regular basis, so you need to have someone that's regularly monitoring the property. So they need to be within a certain locality to make sure that happens for you. Okay. So when we come down to locations, obviously it's quite common sense when it comes to a location scenario. And this sort of suits for most properties anyway, but you want to make sure it's close to transport and infrastructure. The reason why we say that is some of the locations, not every location, but some of the locations, a lot of the tenants may not have a car. So they're relying on bus or train, etc. You want to have high population growth, because what that does is it causes an oversupply of people. And that's where these will work better, because they can't rent a house, or the houses are too expensive. You want a mix of employment opportunities. So a big one, for those of you who do know me, I'm a big one in relation to not buying in a one industry town. So having a big mix of employment opportunities, history of low vacancy within the suburb. So where this can work better is if the suburb is it's consistently low vacancy, even when the market is normal. And this is the question, James, you had about land size before, about what size they are. Well, I always suggest keep land size to a minimum. Do not get a big block of land and have a big backyard. There's no point in that. All you're going to be doing is paying for the garden maintenance, and they're never, ever going to use it. You want to have just a small little courtyard style backyard. That's all you need for a HMO. And like I mentioned before, you have to have adequate parking. That's off-street and on-street parking. So when I say on-street parking, say, for example, 2 of our HMOs are opposite a park. So they can park on the other side of the road. There's no houses on the other side of the road. That's a prime example where they can park 2 or 3 cars on the actual driveway, and they can park 2 or 3 cars just on the road without upsetting the neighbours. That's the biggest one there. Be aware of local zoning conditions. And that's what I mentioned before. With some plans, you need to have a lounge room as well as a bedroom, a bit like a studio apartment. Each council, obviously there's each state, but each council will have certain conditions that you need to be aware of as well. And the big thing, which is the biggest myth, you don't have to be close to a university. So uni students, we don't have any. We have no one in what we would call a uni student. We have immigrant students. They're on a student visa. That's different to a uni student. So we don't have anyone studying to be a doctor. We don't have anyone studying to be a nurse at the local university, but we do have student visas. Now, they are, in a way, uni students to a certain degree, but they're not really. Most of them are just studying English or something along those lines to stay in the country. So, but they're also working outside of that. But they don't have to be close to a university. These are genuine properties that just normal people want to rent. A lot of people think they've got to build these things or buy these things right next to a university, which, sure, they will work there as well, but then all you've got is uni students only, which is not what you want. You want to really have a mixed demographic within your HMO property. Okay, so expenses. So with a HMO, you will have more expenses. So what I mean by that is your normal household expenses you have at home are pretty much what you're going to have for a HMO. Where normally, if you buy, say, the mum and dad house down the road and you rent it to Mr. and Mrs. Smith on one lease, some of these expenses you will not have, like power, gas, internet, etc. But as a HMO, you will have additional expenses because you're really creating a home community for other people to live. So you've got council rates, water rates, insurance. That's normal, right? You would normally have that with any property you buy. With a HMO, you will have to pay the power bill, the gas bill if it's got gas. You have to provide internet. That'll be part of it. Common area cleaning is a big one too. So we always get the common area cleaned by a cleaner every fortnight. Garden maintenance is done every fortnight. Now, garden maintenance can range from just lawns. It can range from lawns to weeding the garden. And sometimes if you have a lot of trees, obviously getting rid of excess leaves, etc. as well. What we provide as part of our HMOs, we always provide welcome packs. That's sheets, towels, pillows, soap, stuff like that. It's just a little thing that makes them feel more homey and I think it'd cost about 30, 40 bucks. Our sheets and towels and pillows, it's not expensive. We just go to Kmart and get the product we need. And of course, long-term, there will be times you may have to replace some of the furniture. Now, in our properties, we haven't really replaced furniture. We've replaced the washing machine, I think, and a couple of things like that. But furniture, I know we did replace one bed. I think someone got a little bit amorous on the bed and broke it, and then we had issues, so we ended up changing it over. But that can happen. But the beds are not expensive. We get cheap beds. Normally, the bed and mattress put together costs around $400 or $500. And we've only had to change one from someone getting a little bit out of hand. But with expenses, yeah, there's other expenses. You've got to understand a HMO property is a bit more like a business structure than what you do as just a normal residential house. All right. So I've got 2 examples here of income and expenditure of properties. 2 examples. Now, both of them are 6 bedrooms, but this first one is a 6-bedroom, 6-bathroom property. And I'm going to just walk you through it quickly to explain to you what I've got. So here, with a room and an ensuite, in most of the locations, you should achieve a minimum rent of $350 a week. People are shocked by that. They go $350 a week. Who's going to pay $350 a week? Believe it or not, ensuite rooms at $350 a week we don't even have to advertise them, because if we have a house where we may have some areas that have a shared bathroom, so we might have 2 or 3 rooms that have a shared bathroom, they're the first ones to opt in for these ensuite rooms. You don't even really have to advertise them. And normally an ensuite room, you get more of a longer term tenant as well. That's the other part that people don't realize. But $350 a week is actually good rent when you're supplying all the furniture, you're paying all the bills, and they just have to move in with a bag. That's really all they have to do. So people don't think that's achievable, but if anything, that's the minimum we get for an ensuite room. So you see here, 3 ensuite rooms at $350 gives you a gross rent of around just over $9,000 a month, right? Which is a fair bit of rent, right? Then you've got, I always allow 5% with my numbers as far as vacancy goes. Believe it or not, we don't even, the vacancy rate in the HMO is less than that. You don't have that high of a vacancy, but I do put it in there as when I'm doing my numbers, just because I want to make sure I'm being a little bit conservative. Now, then it comes down to your expenses. So we're working with $8,600 a week rent. And then with the expenses here, what we've got is we've got interest payments on the loan. Now, this is a 100% loan on this one. So the client used equity to borrow 100% on this one. It's $4,500 worth of interest payments. Now, I've worked on property management fees being 12.5%. But like I mentioned, you've still got other expenses. So you've got your council rates, insurance, energy, internet, cleaning, garden maintenance, etc. per month as well. So you'll see here, out of $8,600, you are paying $6,600 in rent. Expenses. But on a 100% loan, so this is what we call a no down, no deposit property, they're still getting cash flow of $2,000 a month, which is a fair bit of cash flow, right? That's awesome cash flow, everything paid for, you're still ending up with $2,000 minimum per month. Now, what we've got to look at too is when I'm looking at clients is, obviously at some point in the future, we want to own this property outright. We want to get all the rent. We don't want to have any interest. So if the property was owned outright, this property would produce around about $78,000 net income. All right, guys. So that's a high yield, high cash flow property if you owned it outright. So the objective is to put one of these in place and then work out how we're going to get this paid off as quick as possible to bring in that income for yourselves. But even if you didn't pay it off, you've still got about $24,000 a year in rent coming in as a bonus anyway. All right. Now, the next one I've got put together is, this is where we've put in a 20% deposit. So some clients, and I'm going to show you, it's pretty much a bit similar to the case study I've got for you here, is if you put in a deposit, obviously it's more fruitful, it's more profit. But this property here, this is a 6-bedroom, but this is only got 4 rooms with en suites and 2 rooms share 1 bathroom, but they have a little kitchenette in them. So you can't, each room's going to vary slightly, guys. It's not exactly 6 bedrooms, 6 en suites, even though it is a preferred layout. A preferred layout is to have every room with an ensuite. That's definitely the preferred layout. By doing this one, you're going to get, it's a little bit lower rent overall. You've got less than 5% vacancy. You're going to have about $8,200 in rent. But because you put a 20% deposit in, you've got interest payments of $3,300. So that's a lot lower. Your property management slightly lower because your rent yield's lower, but all the other expenses are pretty much the same, right? So your expenses here are about $5,300. And then, of course, your monthly cash flow is just under the $3,000 mark, which realistically is a fair bit of money. But of course, if the property is owned outright, of course, you've got the no interest and it comes in about $74,000 a year. All right, guys. So that's just some income and expenditure for each property. And then what I want to do is explain to you on my whiteboard here how you can put this within your portfolio. So just give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to, okay, guys, I'm back. So what I wanted to show you is where I place a HMO within your portfolio. So let's just look at the big picture of this scenario. So with yourself, like obviously most people have their own home over here. Most people have that home over here. And what we do is we put this HMO in place, right? And say, for example, you've got a 6-bedroom HMO and it's given you, like those numbers I presented to you, it's given you around about $2,000 a week positive cash flow. Now, this is where you have some options. At the end of the day, you've got to consider this property, you're probably going to owe $700,000 plus on the property. And to really take advantage of having a HMO to replace your income, you need to get the debt paid down. So with this $2,000 cash flow, you have many different options. You can either A, reinvest it back into the property to pay the property down slowly. B, you can take that $2,000, start paying off your home mortgage. But what I prefer you to consider and look at is adding more portfolio and using this money to help you fund the rest of your portfolio. So basically treating it like a little bit of a business separate to your personal cash flow. And what I mean by that is if you went out tomorrow and bought 2 more properties, now these would what we would call generic 4-bedroom style properties. But what we want to call these properties, your growth properties, right? With these properties though, and I apologize for my writing, guys, I do write like a doctor. These may be negative $500 per week. But that's okay, because these are going to give you really good growth, and this cash flow is going to help you pay for the properties themselves. So the whole concept of doing it this way is to get this property paid off over time. Now, what I mean by that is, as these properties rise in value, now that might take 5 years, 10 years, whatever it's going to take to make this happen. Once they reach a certain value, you'll be able to sell those properties off, take the equity out of these properties, sell the properties off, take the $700K out and pay that off the HMO and own the HMO outright. Now, that's the way I prefer my clients to put it together. Now, you don't need to have 2 properties. 1 would be sufficient, but 2 is being a little bit more assertive. That will just depend on your risk profile. But the main thing I'm trying to show you here, guys, is if you put a HMO in place, perfect, great cash flow. Put it towards another style of asset that's going to help you pay down this debt. Now, if you did have 2 properties, you might take this equity, you may have enough, you just never know, to pay off this HMO, and this equity might pay out your mortgage. Or you might just retain this property to pay out another future HMO as well. So the only thing that's going to limit what you can do here, like I always say, is realistically your comfort zones and, of course, the bank. All right, guys? But yeah, so that's how I would place a HMO within a portfolio. And I do like to spread my eggs and diversify across different properties, because each property will give you different styles of returns. Let me go back to my computer now, guys. All right, back. All right, so Jess has a few questions that people have sent to us direct. All right, so I've got a couple here.
So yeah, we've had a few questions come through. Yep. With the HMOs, you obviously, with the furniture, do you furnish that yourselves? Or how's the furnishing done?
Yeah, so it depends where the property is. So there are people out there that's obviously specialist property managers, and they have the people that can actually set up the furniture package for you. So I don't want to see people getting doing the flat packing or whatever it might be and getting divorced. Too many people fight over flat packing, but there are furnishing companies out there that can put it all together for you. Yeah. All right. There's a couple more. I think there was about 2 or 3 questions.
Yeah, we did. We had another one. How much do they cost?
Okay, so a HMO property, you've got to imagine if you build one, obviously you can buy a certain plan and manipulate the floor plan, but that could cost you whatever the purchase price is for the property. It could cost you anywhere from 150 to 200 grand more to manipulate the floor plan. So you've got to be prepared for that. If you do build them from scratch, like a 4-bedroom one, they can start as low as 670,000. And of course, you've got your 6-bedroom ones. They can range from anywhere from 790, 800 up to about $1 million. And then, of course, your 9-bedrooms, they actually can go from anywhere from a $1.2 million purchase price to a $1.5 million purchase price. But most importantly, you don't just build these anywhere. The rent has to work. The numbers have to work. So you don't just pick a block of land and build a HMO. You've really got to make sure the area has high demand for it. You've got to do your numbers on what the potential rent yield's going to be, and make sure if you are paying, $1 million for one of these properties, you want the rent yield to be quite high. So it's very important that you build the right product in the right area to make sure the numbers work. Sorry, Jess, next one.
Yeah. So is there a reason why you wouldn't just have a portfolio full of HMOs?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. No, it does make sense. So there's 2 different parts or 2 different times to your portfolio in a way. It depends on your age. So say, for example, I'm a young 45-year-old guy, and I've got a lot more property ahead of me. So for me, I do, like I just showed you on the whiteboard there, you've got the HMO and I use other property. I put other just traditional assets in place. And as they grow, they'll help me pay the HMO down. So it's very important to have other styles of property within your portfolio, and diversification is the key there as well. If say I was after retirement and I had 2 of these or 3 of these owned outright, you could probably just have just HMOs then. But as you're growing your portfolio, you want to have more than HMOs. It just depends on your own scenario, but most times I do prefer to have more than just a HMO.
Yeah, and we just had another one come through as well. The purchase prices you were just talking about before, do they include the land purchase cost?
Yes, it does. It does. So any prices I talk about always includes land cost. Yeah, so when I mentioned like a 4-bedroom, I think I mentioned about 670 odd sort of price. That's including the land. Whereas the 6-bedroom, like just for me personally, we just purchased a 6-bedroom, 6-bathroom property. I think it was 780 we paid for ours. But that was land and property as well. All right. I think that was 780 we paid, approximately around that. It was under 800.
Yeah, cool.
All right.
And there was just one more as well.
Yep.
So when you're talking about the tenants with the HMOs, why wouldn't you have parents with a kid? Why wouldn't you allow someone with a child?
I'll be honest with you, my number one reason there is, how do I say it? There's probably 3 reasons. Number one is you don't know who the other tenants are, and I don't want to be responsible for that child. Number 2, if that mum or dad stops paying rent, how will you feel kicking a person out with a child? That's another one for me. And of course, kids like to get up early, and that could annoy the other tenants. So, and obviously kids, they have a certain volume issue. So their volume is always, for most children, is very high. And other tenants may not like it. So the idea is to make sure you have a mix of tenants. So, but kids definitely aren't on there. But what I do suggest though is obviously not having too many couples either. So sorry, that's not a question from anyone. I just thought of it off the cuff. Is in our, say a 6-bedroom house for us, we might allow 2 couples, but the other 4 have to be single people. Each room can accommodate a couple, so it can vary depending on who's there, who's not. Even though couples aren't a huge demographic that comes after a room, but you don't want to have 6 bedrooms with 6 couples. That's too many people in a 6-bedroom house.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Any other questions, guys?
That's all that we've got that's come through on the chat.
That's all right. But guys, if anyone watching this has some more questions, feel free to still ask. I'll be doing some more questions at the end as well. All right, so let's go on to, sorry guys, I'm having computer issues today. The member portfolio breakdown. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so this is clients of mine I've had for 13 years, and I'm going to break down on the whiteboard what we did for these guys. Now, when I first met Scott and Kelly, they had a mortgage of around 350 grand. And this was 13 years ago. So this is back like 2011, I think it was. And they had a household income of 210 combined. Now, we've been able to get them into 3 or 4 properties over the years, but now they've got 37 grand of passive income coming in, and they've still got 2 other investment properties in place as well. So, but what they've done is, and I'll show you in a minute as well, they've chosen to reinvest their money back into their portfolio, compounding their returns instead of paying off their home mortgage. And I'll show you on my whiteboard now. I'm pretty sure I'm up to that. And always keep in mind, guys, this scenario I'm going to show you may not work for you, but it's what has worked for Scott and Kelly. Hey guys, so back here again. So with Scott and Kelly, the main thing I want to show you here is to show you the big picture of what we're able to do for a client. So I'm going to start off small. I do get a bit scribbly on the old whiteboard like usual, but I'm going to do the best I can. Hope you guys can keep up. So over here, when I first met these guys in 2011, they had a home, obviously, and they had a $350,000 mortgage. Now, when I met these guys, they wanted to start slowly and just sort of build on their portfolio, which is all good. So I've got my numbers here, guys. So they went out in 2011, they went out and bought just a traditional 4-bedroom house and land. So, but what they paid for that is $335,000. Now, different personalities go through different scenarios, but with these guys, what they did was they waited 4 more years before they added another property. So they didn't buy another property until 2015. I normally see that when you've got young kids, etc. But for this other property here, it was another 4-bedroom house, and they paid $400,000 for it. Now, and then again, a couple more years later, they went out and bought another property. So they've added 3 properties to their portfolio. This third one, though, was a dual key property. So it was more of a cash flow style property to help support the other properties. They paid $585,000 for that in 2017. Now, basically, they set and forget that for a short period of time and let it do its thing. Now, I think it was 2021, we decided that, they decided they wanted to be a little bit more assertive with their portfolio. So what we did was, these properties all went up in value, right? But this property number 1, which was the oldest property, this property went to about $850,000 they sold it for. Now, they bought it for $335,000, sold it for $850,000. When it was all sold, capital gains tax paid, all fees paid, they were left with, after 2021, $400,000. Now, they had options here. They had, they could pay it off their mortgage, but their mortgage was down to about $225,000 now. And they said, Wayne, we're looking after that mortgage. We want to be a little bit more assertive with our portfolio. Take this 400 and reinvest it into something of what we call another level of investing. So they've gone from being a basic intermediate investor, and they wanted to go into more advanced investing. So they sold this property off and took their $400,000. But I'm just going to wipe this off, guys. I need a bit more space. So but they did retain these 2 other properties, right? So, but they've still got their 2 properties down here, guys. All right. So they still have 2 properties. 1, 2, and they retain those ones. But what we did was we went out and put together a private investment company to do advanced investing. And what they did, they were quite smart. They really listened to what they could do. So they went out and built a duplex. But on the whole purpose was to buy, build, and sell. Okay. So we bought this property. It was a package. $950,000 is what we paid for this property. And they sold one side for $680,000, and they sold the other side for $682,000. So what that works out, it's $1.362 million was their gross realization of what they sold the properties for. Obviously, they've only got if you remember, they had $400K, so they put $400,000 into this property. So they only had $550K debt on it. But what we did was we still sold both off, took the money, and after capital gains tax, you can't forget about capital gains tax. After capital gains tax and all the costs in relation to buying and selling the property, they made a profit of $225,000. So, but what they wanted to do with that, and this is where I'm quite impressed with what they did, because they paid their 30% tax on this. So it's in a proprietary limited company up here. They pay their 30% tax. So this money is their money inside the company, but it's their money to do whatever they want with now. And what they chose to do, with, of course, some guidance there, is they put that $225,000 over here as a deposit for a HMO. So they didn't build a HMO brand new. They actually manipulated a floor plan, which you can also do. But when they did this transaction, they were able to get $330,000 for 5 of the rooms. So I'll just write this in. Sorry, guys. And they got $335,000 for the other room. For no other reason, they just got extra rent. There was no difference in their rooms really at all. So with all that coming into place, they've got a $225,000 deposit into the property as well. This is how their numbers worked. Now, if you remember, I only work off 95% rent. So gross 95% rent per month is $8,165. But now they've got all their expenses to take out of that. So of course they had interest on their loan, property management fees, and then they've got their utilities. So the expenses, those additional expenses I'll explain to you that a HMO does have. Now, they were around about, $3,010, 1,020, and 1,010. So the cost to run the property was just over $5,000, right? $5,040 per month. They got 8,000 in, 5,000 out, and they were left with net $3,125, which equates to just over $37,000 per annum. Okay, so what they did was they turned their equity or their profit here of 400 grand, turned it into more profit, use that deposit to go and put it into what we call a long-term cash flow property. Now, just remember, they've still got their $400,000 as well, and these two properties over here, which are paying for themselves. So what they're doing now is they're being a little bit more aggressive again. So instead of just doing one duplex like this, they're now doing two at the same time. Now, I don't mean to go too far with it, but just that's what they did. So they've got 37K in their company coming in on a passive scenario. But what that enables them to do is, and it gives them more confidence with this cash flow to be a little bit more aggressive with their money. So with that same $400,000 and the equity from their properties, they can almost do two duplexes at the same time, but we don't do them exactly at the same time. We do it in what we call a crossover mentality. So you might have one property here that you've got to build and sell, and then halfway through, you then start the next one. All right, so it's crossed over. But having that $37,000 up here, passive income coming in, it gives you more confidence to do that because it's basically looking after itself. It depends on your debt level and how much cash you've got. But these guys only started with a house and a mortgage. It's quite easy to do, and that's why I like to explain it all to you guys. All right, so I could keep going with these guys, but obviously out of each one of these, they're going to take that any profit they get, they're going to then take that and put that into another property, whether it's HMO or whatever, we haven't decided yet. But the main thing is they're basically lifted themselves from a basic to an intermediate investor into more an advanced investor. But what they've done, and this is what I really like, they've kept all this money separate in their lifestyle. These guys are only 53 to 54, and they know in the next 10 years, they can really make a difference in their life and replace all their income. And to a certain degree, keep doing this depending on where they're going to go. They'll probably go from duplexes to more into like a townhouse style thing as you get more equity and capital behind you. But at the end of the day, we're only doing small stuff to make small amounts of money. I suppose it's not really small amounts of money, but to make a good sum of money to help you progress into your portfolio. But guys, all good. Let's see if you've got any questions on that. I'm back. All righty. So as a question, that's really all I've got for today. Sorry, guys. But what I wanted to know was, do you guys have any questions on anything we've spoken about today? So I've gone through the HMO style product. That's a product I have within my own portfolio that works really well. And then, of course, I've gone through a scenario there just to show you. I just do that because I want you to see what you can do in the marketplace. And they were just normal, everyday people too. So is there any other questions anyone has at the moment? I don't think we have any more questions, which is all good. But guys, probably the biggest thing is, if any of you new guys out here that were referred to us from a friend, accountant, etc., if you just wanted to touch base with one of our consultants here, I'm going to get Jess to put in the chat. She's going to just chuck in the chat now what they call a 15-minute call. So you can click that link, book in a time. We jump on a call to see if we can help you or not. If not, if we can't help you, we'll just give you a tiny bit of guidance on what you've got to do to get going. And yeah, that's about it, guys. But don't forget, next month, Saturday, the 18th of May, listen, I really hope that you guys learned something today, or I was able to help you guys put something together. My job is just about basically seeing people grow financially, whether they're just giving you the brain space to do it yourself, or you want us to do it for you. I just like to see people grow financially and to tell the government to stick it, basically, at the end of the day. So, guys, thanks again. And yeah, have a great weekend. If you need anything, reach out to us, Facebook, phone number, whatever. Yeah, just get in contact with us, and happy to have a chat. All right, have a good one.